Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of SmugMug Live. Wherever you're joining us from today, thank you so much for being here. This is the last show of 2021, and I can't think of a better way to finish off the year than having a nice conversation with my dear friend David Grover, who'll be joining us in just a moment. This is episode 115. Broadcast live Wednesday, December the 22nd, 2001. Thank you so much for joining. SmugMug Live, as always, is brought to you by SmugMug and Flickr. If you're looking for somewhere to showcase your images to the world, store your images online, and have a fantastic e-com solution, then check out what we do here at smugmug.com. Or if you're looking to be part of an incredible photo community, sharing your passion for photography with like-minded people, then check out everything we do at flickr.com. And of course, we would love it if you would hit that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube. If you're joining us today on Facebook, then hit that like button and consider checking out the channel over on YouTube, where you'll see a much better quality of everything we do here on SmugMug Live. Right, let me see if today's guest is with me. I'm delighted to be joined by my dear friend David Grover from Capture One. Hi, David. How are you?
Hey, Alastair. How you doing?
Not too bad, not too bad. Thank you for being here. And yeah, it's the last show for me. So thank you for being my last victim of the year.
A pleasure. I mean, who books a show on the 22nd of December? But, you know.
Wow. Got to squeeze you in somewhere. We're both busy.
Hardworking people. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Because you have been very busy recently with the launch of the latest version of Capture One Pro, Capture One 22, which is out now. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah. I've been very busy with that. November, December is always the busiest period, which is not the best timing, but it is what it is. So behind the scenes, obviously the public knows about it. December 9th, which when it was launched, but there's a long period before that, of course, where we're getting everything ready, making tutorials, seeing what works, what doesn't, and all those kinds of things. So it's a much longer drawn out process behind the scenes, that's for sure, which I'm sure you know about as well.
Yes, we've launched a couple of software products in our time, so yeah, we're very aware of how it works. One of the main reasons, other than having the opportunity to talk with a dear friend, one of the main reasons I wanted Dave here today is because we're working together on our latest Flickr competition.
Yes.
So if you're not aware, we have announced Your Best Shot 2021, which is Flickr's biggest competition of the year. If you head over to Flickr, head over to Your Best Shot 2021, you can join that competition. Nearly 12,000 people have already joined there and submitted nearly 9,000 images for the competition, which is awesome. And what is really good is that we have some amazing prizes for the category this year. So there's 7 categories in total, and you can win several prizes, but one of those prizes for each category is a copy of the latest Capture One Pro 22, right?
Correct. Yep, that's right. So we're happy to support that and give away a bunch of licenses. So I'm looking forward to seeing the results.
Yeah, so well worth those of you watching to have a look through your archive, see what the best picture you think you took this year was. Check out the categories that are on offer there. There's a whole bunch of categories that you could submit your best image under, and go see if you are lucky enough to win some prizes. As I mentioned, Dave and the team at Capture One are giving us Capture One Pro 22 licenses. There's also some awesome Peak Design bags to be won, and Flickr Pro memberships as well. So a great little prize fund there, and a fun competition. As I say, nearly 12,000 people in that competition already. It's going to be an interesting judging of that competition. I reckon we'll get up close to maybe 20, 30,000 photos in there. And we've got a great panel of judges, including Dave and myself. So looking forward to...
We are open for bribery, right?
No.
No? I thought that was part of the job.
Well, we'll see. It's going to be a long old judging process. The competition runs and closes on the 4th of January 2022. So you've got a few weeks left to get through those archives, check out maybe what picture you want to submit and find a category for it. Join the group over on Flickr, Your Best Shot 2021. And good luck, and we look forward to seeing all your submissions. And maybe you'll consider editing one of those submissions in Capture One for next year if you're lucky enough. So, but back to today, back to this show. David, new version of the software just out. You're going to spend some time with us just giving us the highlights and a little run through of some of those coolest new features.
That's right.
And you know, it's the last show of the year, so we do have a little celebratory tipple in the background. So we'll try and keep it on track as much as we can. But yeah, I'll pass it over to you, and we'll have a little chat about some of these cool new features.
Definitely. And any questions, don't be shy as well. Feel free to throw them my way. So
questions about anything or about the
anything,
software?
You know, what to buy the wife for Christmas if you've forgotten to do it already.
I might put that one in the chat. So yeah, get in the chat window there, either on Facebook or on YouTube, if you have any questions for David or myself, and I'll monitor that chat while we're looking through what Dave's going to present. So I believe you've got a share screen ready.
Yep, we do.
So there we go.
So 3 to 5 main features. The majority of this was built around, if you like, the ability to have a multi-image workflow. And when I say that, I don't mean the ability to work on more than one image at a time. You've always been able to do that in Capture One, work on a batch, edit a batch, all those kinds of things. But this is the first time we've been able to combine more than one photo to get an end result. And the two things currently which that is HDR merging and panoramic stitching. So that's the first two things. And one of the great benefits of that is to remain, if you like, in a raw workflow. So when we stitch a panorama or panoramic image together, or we blend a sequence of HDR photos, then the result still remains a raw file. So you don't lose out on any of that editing flexibility, which you might do if you were using an application like Affinity or Photoshop or something like that, where your workflow would then be a resulting TIFF file. So this just gives you a bit more flexibility. Capture One has always been strong at tethering your camera, so shooting directly to the computer. It's well known for doing that, but this is the first time we actually have introduced a proper wireless solution currently for Canon. So you don't need any different hardware if your Canon camera is wireless capable, and also part of our supported list, which you can find on the support site. Then you'll be able to connect wirelessly to your computer and shoot, and Capture One behaves as if it's connected via a USB cable. So you have all the same functionality. You just cut the cord, which is
that's pretty cool.
Nice.
Yeah. I mean, you've always been probably I'll say it for you. You've been the leader in the software market when it comes to tethered software, tethered shooting. It's Capture One's been the go-to solution for that since digital photography was kind of around. But
yes.
This next step into wireless is really interesting. But you're saying at the moment it's just Canon cameras and
just for Canon,
just certain ones. But I take it this is the start of the journey into trying to support as many as possible.
And the reason why we chose Canon for this first step, if you like, was not to be mean to all the non-Canon shooters. But typically, if you look statistically, which camera models shoot the most tethered into Capture One, Canon figures very highly. And secondly, which is also an advantage for Canon, they have one of the most wirelessly, if that's even a word, wirelessly capable camera models out there, which is the R5 with the additional grip. So they have the Canon R5, which does have built-in wireless functionality, which is mostly centered around if you want to connect to, iOS or Android or something like that. But if you buy the additional grip, that has more antennas, higher bandwidth and so on, which then makes it a really capable wireless machine. And in the right environment with a good router, other environment working in your favor, then really the transfer speed is actually pretty good. And additionally, if you're working outside, no one likes to have trailing cables on the ground, especially if the weather isn't great. That's just a really nice additional bonus for a bit of freedom. So yeah, and then we'll see how it goes depending on market feedback and which manufacturers people want to see as well, bearing in mind that the camera body needs to have a certain amount of capability for it to be useful. If it takes 20 seconds to transfer a photo, no one's going to be interested in that. But something like, I don't know, the Nikon Z9 is probably interesting to look at because that has a lot of wireless equipment in it, and so on. But it's early days yet to make any promises.
But great start, and definitely the way the industry is going to go. We've got a few interesting comments. Thank you to everybody who's already given themselves a shout out in the chats there. Thank you so much for doing that. Nice. For example, Fiona is joining us from Pennon in Scotland.
Very nice.
So local to me. She's currently just an LR editor, but very, very, very curious about Capture One.
Good.
So that's cool. And then Hanola Photography. She's just got my WFT for my R5. Yep, for my R5, together with the Nighthawk M5. Nighthawk, is that the router?
Yeah, Nighthawk M5 is actually an awesome... I don't have it anymore, I don't think. I was looking for my baby one. The Nighthawk M5 is an awesome 5G hotspot. And also you can hardwire it to your capture station, so via USB-C and I think Ethernet as well, but USB-C works too. So if you are on location and you want to shoot wirelessly with that setup, then you can also use our service Capture One Live, which allows you to transmit the session that you're working in to a third party, so perhaps the client or a stylist or something like that, and they can monitor the shoot as you're shooting as well. So that's a really good mobile workflow. The only disadvantage of the M5 Nighthawk is the price, but it's one of those value things. If you need to have a fast 5G solution and work mobile, it's really the only one that is available. So,
well, it sounds like Hanola Photography's got the setup there, but that's a really interesting use case scenario, especially in this day and age when we're still kind of socially distancing, kind of half locked into our local places. So to maybe have a client who's in another venue or maybe even another part of the world, and shooting tether, that's really interesting. And
you can do all of that wirelessly, which is fantastic.
Well, I hope it goes well for you, Hanola. That's a very interesting setup, and thank you to all those regulars tuning in to the channel and giving themselves a shout out. Right, let's see what else you got under the hood there over in the new Capture One Pro 22.
Okay, so we chatted about the wireless side of things, so that's all cool, and also panoramic stitch and HDR. So let's see exactly how that works. When we talk about panoramic stitching, the first thing you tend to think about is I'm going to shoot a landscape, and I would like to have that wider aspect ratio, and then I'm going to shoot 2 or 3 pictures. And away you go. So that's, if you like, the traditional thought process behind a panoramic shoot. But there are other uses, which I can show you 1 or 2 examples of as well. But even just if you don't have that correct lens in your bag and you can't quite fit the scene in, panoramic doesn't have to be a spectacular array of 10 shots. It could just be 2 frames that you're going to stitch together. So also it's worth getting out the mindset that you're going to produce some kind of 16 by 2 panoramic strip. That's not necessarily the case. It has some really good practical uses. But to show you how it works, if I just grab, how many have we got? 1, we're going to grab 4 pictures. And I've chosen these as they're particularly beefy. This is from one of our ambassadors, Paul Reefer. So they're 100 megapixel shots. So picking something relatively huge to also stitch together, just to show you the kind of performance you can expect even with big files. So a right click on any of the shots, doesn't matter which one, and you don't have to assemble them in any kind of order either. We can then say stitch to panorama. And then you'll get a secondary window that will pop up. You can see the pictures down at the bottom, the ones that I chose, and then Capture One will generate a preview based on the projection up here in the top left-hand corner. So depending, what you're shooting, in this case, we just shot, or Paul just shot, a sequence of 4 captures, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it makes sense to use something like the cylindrical projection. So this is just really the way the photos are assembled. We have a look at a spherical one in a second, which is for, multi-row. We've actually got a shot from a drone, which is quite a good example.
Okay.
But this is just my preview. You can see underneath, we can actually scale down the resulting panorama as well, because they can get quite large.
Yep.
And we don't necessarily need to retain all the megapixels unless you're looking to do enormous prints or something like that. So this one stitched together with the overlap would be about 170 megapixels. If we don't need it that big, then we could crank it down to 50%, 75% or whatever. And then all we need to do, just kind of down there, you see the stitch button, and we can hit that, and then it will assemble it together. Now, the good news is this is a background task. I'll just pull this activity window up. So whilst this is happening, you can go and do something else. You could load up another one to stitch. You could edit some other pictures or whatever. And there we go. It's just actually behind.
Cool, because in a lot of software that would be a kind of front end process, and so you wouldn't be able to do anything else until that.
No.
Yeah,
you
that
do
finished stitching.
Whatever you want.
Yeah. Cool.
And you can't see it on my screen, but because it's on my other monitor, but you would generally get where our SmugMug Live logo is. You would see a notification that says your panorama has stitched. Click here to see it. So it's this one actually here, just where Alastair was. So if I open that up, then we can see our full panorama. And the reason why I've been using this one as a demo is that it's quite a complex one to knit together, because it has a lot of these geometric shapes, as you can see, and there's a lot that could go wrong. We've got this, it's in Iceland, which you could probably guess, but we've also got clouds which are probably moving. We've got the mountainscape in the background. We've got all kinds of stuff going in the foreground, and I cannot find any blend marks, lines, or whatever, or any of those things. So it does actually knit it together super nice. We leave the black in as well, so we don't auto crop out. So if you did want to fill that in Capture One, we could heal that area. You could do so. You could use a content aware fill to do a similar thing as well. And as I said, the resultant file you can see under here is DNG. So it means I retain, my raw file,
all the raw information.
Raw information. So I've pulled the highlights down. It's just grabbed the adjustments from one of the shots. But we've got, all the ability to edit that without any loss of quality and so on. So that's really important. And that's, 400 megapixel shots stitched together. So that's pretty beefy as well. The other one, which is worth looking at, or it's different kind of panorama, if you like, which is, we don't want that one. That's the stitched one. We don't want to stitch the frames to the stitch. Oh, no, it isn't. That's the center one. My mistake. So we're going to select all of these. So we've got 3, 6, 9 shots taken from a Mavic 2, I think it is. I don't know if the Mavic 2 has a shoot a panorama mode on it. Maybe someone knowledgeable in the chat does, or if Paul just kind of waved it around to get enough of the scene. But anyway,
I think you can tell it to.
It sounds like the kind of thing which should. So I need spherical for this. It sounds like the kind of thing that you think you might be able to do.
And you said earlier that you don't. It doesn't matter what order you choose these pictures in.
No,
so what it's finding is it's just finding key points in each of those images and smartly knows which ones to join together. So you can just grab all of them. That's pretty cool.
So that's Wembley Stadium in London. So that stitched those together. Now they were smaller files, so that stitch obviously much faster than 400 megapixel files. But that was 9. Don't know how many megapixels the Mavic is, but still, relatively hefty. Stitch those together, and then we get our DNG, which will just pop up down there. So if I open this up, and then you can see how the projection looks. But again, this one's a good example because we've got loads of grid lines, loads of geometric shapes. We've got buildings, we've got houses, we've got the skyline. the Wembley Arch and everything. There's all kinds of things that could get messed up with that. And again, I've struggled to find it. Now, the other thing, or I guess preconceived idea, is that you need expensive gear to shoot panoramas, which is not really the case. Quality in tends to get quality out. So if you do use a tripod and you do, get consistent overlap and all those kinds of things, you are likely to get a better panorama. But I've got the quick handheld one here. This is Joe McNally, just did a quick test for us when he was in London just a few weeks back. So he stood at what's this? That's Eros's fountain, I think.
Piccadilly.
Piccadilly, yeah. So he stood in Piccadilly. I've got no idea what order these
or is
are
it
in.
Piccadilly? Maybe that's not Piccadilly. Is that Oxford
I think
Street?
it is, because that's Lily White's there, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Which is at the end. So if we grab those and merge those, stitch to panorama. And this is one difference you can tell, because this was a quick handheld shot. You'll see a difference. So we want cylindrical. There we go, not spherical. You'll see a difference like between hand holding and with a tripod, because no matter how much you be the tripod, you can never keep it quite as level as everything else. So you can see how this is kind of sliding down to the left, because the rotation of the camera didn't remain level. But it's still, we won't do 200 megapixels. Let's do a slightly smaller one, because you guys don't want to sit there and watch it stitching together. So we knock that down a bit. And you'll see a repetitive raindrop in this one, which is easy to clone out. But
handheld panoramics are always difficult, because it's where you probably see the most parallax issues, right? Where
exactly,
you're not holding it over the camera necessarily over the same spot in in space, kind of thing. So it's always a difficult one for software. So there are techniques you can use to maximize success. Try and rotate yourself around the camera rather than just turning your whole body. It's kind of cool, but yeah.
And then we got a few raindrops, but we could go through and
it rains in London.
Yeah, apparently, yeah.
Just a Scottish thing.
We could get rid of a few of those kinds of things, but you don't need to watch me do that. But yeah, again, nice little stitch together. We've got all the raw editing capabilities, so we could pull up the shadows, take the highlights down, add a bit of clarity, and we've got pretty nice panorama.
Still a tricky subject with all the the brickwork and all the the leading lines. Obviously, a lot of ghosting, but in the buildings, it looks really to have done a great job for a handheld.
Yeah, exactly. Stitch. And this is 2.5 seconds, so long exposure, lots of people moving around. So so it's working super nice. Yeah.
That guy McNally, you should consider going full time. He's pretty good.
He's pretty good. He knows what he's doing. And the last. Maybe slightly different use of it is it was a technique that was named after a photographer in the US, and I always get it wrong. So it's Brenizer effect. I can't remember his first name, which I should need to give him a shout out really. But he came up with this method of standing, relatively close to your subject with a longer lens, and then filling in like a multi-row stitch, and then you just get this really nice hyperreal shallow depth of field effect. So if we stitch this to panorama, and we would want spherical because we've got more than one row. I've actually got one missing shot here on this, which you'll see. Not because Leroy, who shot this, he shot some photos for our campaign, because I don't think I downloaded it. So there's just a little missing bit in the bottom right-hand corner. But, you see let's go a bit bigger for this one. You see the kind of effect you get once we stitch this together. But it's a really fun way to shoot, portraits and subjects and so on. There'll be a blog post on our Learning Hub tomorrow about it, learn.captureone.com, from
about that technique.
Yeah, about that technique from a photographer in the Netherlands, Chris Van Riel, who does a lot of dogs and portraiture and everything, and he did a really stunning shot. I think it was inside a church or just in church grounds, but looks really interesting.
So you're standing further away, which means you've got a shallow depth of field, but you've also got compression in the image.
Yeah, exactly.
And then just do multi-stitches to get the width
Yeah.
and space of the image. Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, so you get quite a
Really
nice
interesting
effect.
technique.
And you can do it handheld. Again, you don't need to go out and splash the cache on a load of
Sliders and
highlights
stuff.
down, sliders and stuff. You
Yeah.
can buy a very cheap nodal rail, which is just basically a plate. Hang on. So if you imagine half of this, so without that bit, this is an L bracket, but just a
Yep.
plate which basically sits on your tripod, and you can pull the camera back a little bit. And then when you're rotating, you're not rotating around the back of the camera, you're rotating around the, what's the technical term?
The nodal point.
Well, apparently it's
Or the
not the nodal point.
the plane of something.
It's the entrance pupil point, or the lens entrance pupil point,
Right.
where the light does that in the crosses over in the lens. That's really the bit you want to rotate. So yeah, so just a cheap rail like that can make a big difference. So that's panoramic stitching.
Very good. Well, it's good to see that in Capture One now, and it looks to be very slick, very fast, and the fact that it's doing it in the back end, the background as well. That's really
Definitely
cool that you can get on with selecting other pictures and stuff while that's
you could do anything.
working.
You could set another panoramic stitch to go if you wanted. So
cool.
So HDR, which typically is the ability to, if you like, expand the dynamic range that your camera could acquire in a single shot. So obviously, let's just open up one of these. Let's grab this. Typical kind of scenario where we might need this kind of technique is that we've got a very bright outside and we've got a darker lit interior. And of course, what we would want to do is open up the shadows so we can see a bit more into that, pull the highlights down, maybe our whites, add a bit of contrast to get our final effect, which, you know, we've done pretty good here. So then the question arises, well, what's the point of doing an HDR kind of merge of several exposures if I can do that with one particular shot? And it's a good argument, but at the end of the day, if you want to maximize the output in terms of quality, then by having more dynamic range to play within the final shot, it means you could perhaps open up the shadows to a greater extent than what you would need to. It could potentially mean that you could pull the highlights down a bit more, but probably more importantly is the quality argument. So I'm going to reset this one, and then we're going to stick 2 or 3 of these together. Now I've got more photos than I typically need here, to be honest. So something we found in testing was that when we gave this tool to beta testers, they would go out and shoot, 8 frames with a quarter stop in between them or something like that and stick those together. And there isn't really much benefit to that, because what we're trying to do is capture the extremities of the range. Now, I could argue if your camera had a really narrow dynamic range, then yes, perhaps you might want to shoot a lot of frames. But any camera in the past, 4 or 5 years has a pretty impressive out of the gate dynamic range. So there's little benefit to going nuts and shooting tons and tons of pictures. So what we found, 3 shots, -2, 0, +2 is kind of a good benchmark to shoot for. So if I grab, what's this one at? That's at a 15th of a second. So if we grab that one and our bright one, and we're going to combine these into one raw file again. So right click, and we're going to say merge to HDR. Only a small menu at this point. We get auto adjust and auto align. So auto adjust, the professionals in this would say, oh, I'm going to turn that off. Don't actually, leave it on, because it doesn't actually change any data in the resultant file, because it's a raw file. All it does is give you kind of a good start point. So if you want to reduce the amount of work that you're going to do for yourself, turn on auto adjust. It helps. Auto align, we don't necessarily need. If you've used a tripod, then you can turn that off. But it does mean, again, you can do a handheld HDR sequence. The easiest way to do that is just to set up a bracket in your camera. So tell the camera to do -2, 0, +2. Make sure you're on continuous shooting. Take the shot. Chances are that there'd be so little movement between each capture anyway especially if your camera has a high frame rate. But if you're not using a tripod, you can tick that on, and that will just make sure the pixels match up. So let's say merge. Again, it's a background task, so we can go and do something else. I will say our time estimation is a little off at the moment. So it tends to like to say 10 seconds, even if it's 5 seconds or 30 seconds. So take what the menu says with a small pinch of salt at the moment.
It's a work in progress. Need a little tweak.
So,
a little tweak.
So there's our resultant raw file with auto adjustments. So it's kind of balanced in the middle, if you like. If we go back to, so that was the one I was comparing it to, I think. So let's pull that one up. Now, for some strange reason, why are my sliders blanked out? That's kind of weird. Why is that happening, Alastair?
Well, what I would do at this point is I would get one of the educational experts from Capture One to join us and
hang on a second
and work out why that has not happened.
Maybe
it's called Demo Gods. You know,
it's called Demo Gods.
Yeah, whenever you're doing a demo,
well, I'm working
has to go wrong.
Off an external hard drive, and it's got, you can see down here, it's probably hard to see, there's a little read write icon, which is not happening. So we're going to fix that. Let's just make a quick session. Let's just call this SmugMug, like so, and then we're going to go back to this one. We're going to find it,
bring it in,
and we're going to bring it in and hope that fixes it.
This is a great moment to have a drink, Dave.
Exactly, yeah. Let's see. Let that build. There we go, fixed. Okay, so let's just do a auto adjust. It's because I'm working off that. It's quite an old catalog, which I should probably give it a refresh.
You know, if you really wanted to stress yourself, Dave, you should do what I do and do demos of a product that lives online. So, you know, there's always that fun of
glad I don't have to
live demos of something that lives online.
So we're back to where we need to be. So I just did a quick auto on that, and I'm also going to bring in. Let's just grab the middle one. So let's just bring that up in the Finder. So I'm also going to bring in the middle one so we can compare those two together. So there we go. So that's our, if you like, middle-ish shot, or at least one which has got some highlights going on. And this is the one we did with our HDR. I'd probably make that a little bit darker. And let's just pull those whites down a bit. So that's, you know, pretty good representation. Now, where it's interesting with this one, we can do a similar thing. Let's open up the shadows. We could make it a touch brighter. We could, if I just bring the other one up. So it's not, you know, a million miles away in terms of tonality and density and all those things. Let's pull the whites down a bit. And if we bring these two up side by side, let's just have a look into the, and I'll go super big so you guys can see what's going on.
Yep.
So this is a good example, because if we look in just the single file, the curtain that's hanging in the background has quite a fine texture. So if we look at the single file, you see we've actually lost a lot of that texture because we've had to, you know, before adjustment, we've actually had to open up those shadows quite a lot. And yes, we've got some flexibility in the file, and, you know, considering that it started off like that, you know, we've got a reasonable amount of flexibility in the file, but it's still not as good as having all that nice clean data at either end of the scale. So even if you look at the reflection off the top of the light there's a little bit of, you know, the quality is dropped because of the noise. We can't necessarily tell which is the good and bad pixels, so we get that lack of cleanliness and so on. And if we actually go
noticeably different,
the other curtain up here, and then we pull open the shadows, let's just bump up the shadows so we can see into it. I'll go bigger so you can see, and we open up the shadows on this one. You know, you can see it's
very noticeable.
cleaner.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
you
a
just
lot
get,
of a lot of people say nowadays, oh, you can just take one shot, make one under, make an underexposed version
yeah,
of it, an overexposed version of it, and you can, and you will get dynamic range. But what you're highlighting here is not only have you retained the dynamic range, but you've retained the quality of
yeah,
the sharpness, the clarity, the detail in an image by still capturing individual shots that you're then merging together.
yep, absolutely. So you just get that, much, much cleaner result. Now there is, a slight bit more work at the end of the day, just to merge them,
Yeah.
but that's only a few seconds. And then if you're there in that situation anyway, if you've got a setting or like a profile on your camera, just to say go to bracket and you've already got it pre-configured, hit the button once, 3 shots done, and then jobs are
Yeah.
good. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, for many of us now, HDR doesn't really mean what it used to mean in photography.
No,
HDR was very much more a kind of creative
a
style.
style,
Yeah,
wasn't it?
when it first came out. Now I know, for me personally, bracketing images and doing high dynamic range images is in many cases more about noise control and detail control of an image
Exactly.
rather than trying to create
Exactly.
some elaborate universe which we don't recognize as being natural.
Yeah. And even on, a shot like this, which isn't something I would necessarily think about doing, HDR on, like I would probably shoot that
Yeah,
and then still be able to, get a nice photo out of it at the end of the day and be happy with it and so on. Um, but if I wanted to print that big and then looking into all these areas and retain as much detail as possible, then having that extra little edge by blending this as an HDR would be a worthwhile thing to do, especially if you're earning money from it as well.
yeah.
So
So
yeah,
that last image I always want to see. It's Dumbledore, but it's Dudley
Dumbledore.
Door down south. Is that
Himself,
zoom in? Is
yeah.
that all photographers on the shoreline there? Is that?
Possibly, yeah.
It's a very popular photo spot, that's for sure. So
Definitely,
lots of people
definitely.
enjoying the beautiful coast in that
Yeah.
part of the world.
And this is a great camera. That's a GFX 100S, so
Hmm.
it's still you still get pretty nice cleanliness in the shadows. But again, if we stitch that one
Yep.
together,
Right.
let's actually do that. So merge. Let's see if my disk access screws me again. Probably will.
Well, there you go. You've learned something today, Dave. And
I've
you,
learned something.
before
Exactly.
going
Yeah.
live, make sure you have them on the main drive.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it shouldn't actually matter the being on the external
External.
drive, but this catalog that we're looking at is um, the contents of the drive that I had a big cleanup today. I deleted a bunch of stuff. I archived a
Move
load of
stuff
things,
around.
moved stuff around, and I should have actually just dragged this catalog back off its location locally once
Yeah.
again. But I
Well,
thought, it'll be all right.
while that's merging together,
Mm-hmm.
I just want to remind folk that Dave has really just given us the highlights of the cool new stuff on Capture One Pro 22. But if you are new to the software and it's something you want to learn more about, where can people go to have you tell them a lot more about Capture One Pro from the basics up?
Yeah, the best place to go to is learn.capture1.com. So that's our learning hub, which has tutorials, blog posts, short introductions, webinars, those kinds of things. There's also our YouTube channel, which is Capture One Pro. So if you go to that, then you'll find a few extra things like live broadcasts as well, which we do relatively regularly. Not as regular as you, Alastair. You're a machine at this, but at least
Oh, I don't know
once,
about that. A
at
couple of
least
times a week at
once
most.
a week, or 3 or 4 times a month, we do a shorter live stream on just some technical aspect or something. So this one's all
Yeah.
good. So
Cool.
that's
Right.
our
Let me find you.
HDR,
There we
which
go.
is kind of bang in the middle pretty much of the shots. It's had an auto adjustment, so it's kind of roughly in the right place. But if I did want to have a bit more highlights, I could. I personally don't like the full-on, HDR effect, which is just to make it unrealistic. So I personally would expect to have some realism in there, because if I'm standing looking at the sun and something is backlit, I would actually expect it to be a little bit, hazy and so on, and have that difference. So whilst we could eradicate that, I personally wouldn't want to. But in terms of, if we just go stupid distance again, and then this one was the one I edited. So on our right is our HDR, and on our left is our single file.
Much sharper, huh?
Nice, cleaner, sharper. We've got a little bit of milkiness to this. We can see more detail in the finer things like the trees and so on. And if I wanted to peek more into that area, I could. If we pull up shadows on this, it then just starts to go a little bit blotchy and so on. But this is a smaller difference than the other shot, which was from a Sony A7R III, I think, where it really benefits, and then we get less of a benefit here. But still, again, if you're looking to squeeze the maximum out, and you can actually see in the sky, we've got more detail going on. We've got rid of that hotspot, if you like, in the center. So if you are looking to squeeze out the maximum amount of detail, then it's just another tool in your arsenal. And thinking of that, there was actually, I haven't shot a sample of it yet, but I need to try. There was an unintended additional feature of HDR, which was an additional tool to get rid of noise in a single frame. So if I was to shoot a scene, like let's say a nighttime scene, and my camera wasn't great and I had to crank up the ISO and have a longish exposure, and I got loads of noise in the picture, if I shoot 10 identical frames, or 20 or 30, doesn't matter, or 5, just a number of identical frames at the same exposure of the same scene, and use the HDR tool to merge them, what it will actually do is start to clean up the signal. So it will get rid of the noise. So your signal to noise, if you like, ratio gets much, much better. So the noise can be identified, the good pixels can be identified, and then by having 10 frames, because the noise isn't constant between each frame, then we can blend those together and actually get a really clean shot. So that's kind of a unintended bonus feature of it as well.
Very cool.
Cool. And the last thing, so we've got, let me just reset all of these, or reset a particular thing.
Well, while Dave's resetting that stuff, I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. Head over to our YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification. That way you'll be notified whenever we release another episode here on SmugMug Live. This is episode 115, but it is the last one of the year. I'll be back in the new year in early January with some more tips and tricks episodes on how you can use SmugMug, our product, and how you can use that in your business and in your photography hobby or passion. And we'll also be joined very regularly by our ambassadors and some great guests like Dave to give us an insight into some of the other things that are happening in the industry. But yeah, give us a like, hit that thumbs up button, whether you're joining us on Facebook or on YouTube today. And thank you for your time so far. Dave, you ready to show us this last little bit? Cool.
Yeah, I just wanted to reset all their rotations, because also in this version we've got our first toe in the water of artificial intelligence, which I know is a big buzzword. AI is not something that's been in Capture One before, certainly in terms of editing, because it's probably not really for our market base in terms of totally automating the editing process. That's not really what Capture One is about. But if we can add some AI tools that take out some of the boring or time consuming or irritating aspects, then personally I think that's a good, a good way to use that technology. And the first AI thing that's come in is automatic straighten or rotate, or whatever you want to call it. But basically I've got a bunch of pictures here, all zeroed out. So whatever one I click on, you can see it's all zeroed out at angles. Some of them are wonky, like you can see from, this horizon, but they're not all horizon-based shots. We've got some portraits, got a bit of landscape, just, a bunch of different things. So all I need to do in the rotation tool is click on this little magic wand, and then that will just auto rotate everything like so. And then you'll see them all jiggle around and adjust like so. So like any AI technology, it isn't 100% accurate. But I saw something the other week which increases its accuracy by a huge amount, which hopefully we'll be able to squeeze into a future release as well. I think what's important to add as well is that we're not harvesting your data. We're not sending all your photos up the pipeline to Capture One HQ to help the AI learn. It's been to school. It's had its learning process, and it's now at a certain level of education, if you like. So we're not harvesting your data or anything like that. But as updates of Capture One come out, then we'll be able to make tweaks to the AI engine to make it more reliable as well. Cool. Yeah. So, and we can actually kind of blend AI with a little bit of good old-fashioned maths as well to get the best of both worlds. So that's the next plan.
Cool.
And nice, so it works feature on a batch of pictures, or let's just reset these guys, or it just works on a single picture, and you can see how quick it works. So and of course, if you need to tweak it, then you can just do so. But I personally think that if I take 200 shots that I've just done and I hit auto, then 70% of that work is done. And then if I need to tweak any of the others, then I can go and I can use my straighten tool. But that one's actually pretty good.
Yeah, you can see that
as it is. Yeah,
bang on.
Yeah, so I can use my straighten tool, or I can just jog it. If I reset this one, does a pretty good job as well. So I think the other thing that people expect, it's looking for verticals and straight lines and all that, which it's not. It's apparently a lot deeper than that and above my pay grade. So
probably analysing the scene and making a good guess at what's in the scene.
Exactly.
And then making an assumption on that.
So it's probably far more sophisticated than I give it credit for.
Yeah, good. And it's great to do that really quickly with tons of images, and then maybe you only have one or two then that you maybe want to be a bit more creative on or have a bit more control over. But that's
nobody likes
cool little feature.
Rotate and straighten hundreds and hundreds of pictures. Really, that's just boring. So a couple of other things that I can't show because it's not practical, but if you're a Windows user, then you should see a marked speed increase when you're working with your catalog. So that's browsing collections, filtering results, moving between different collections and so on. So that should be a whole new experience for Windows users. Mac users, it was just kind of more of a leveling up. Windows was a little bit behind. Mac users should find a little speed increase in browsing between pictures as well, and the speed at which you're kind of zooming in and panning around. You might see a little increase in that as well. And there's a few other little UI UX tweaks in there, like any other update.
Polishing
here, there, and everywhere. Yeah, exactly.
Very cool.
Yeah, and of course, throughout the next months, we release additional updates, bug fixes, new camera support, new features going as well. Like in Capture One 21, midway through the release cycle, if you like, we added the magic brush, we added a new exporter, added a whole bunch of stuff. So there's always things to come during the release cycle too.
Yeah. Cool. Well, when some of that comes to town, we'll just have to have you back on.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Talk about that. We'll look forward to it. Of course, if you want to find out more, head over to capture1.com and you can find out more about that. Please, if you want to be with a chance to win a version of a license for Capture One Pro 22, it's part of the prize bundle for Your Best Shot over on Flickr. So head over to Flickr, check out the Your Best Shot 2021 group, give that a join, upload your best image of the year to one of the appropriate categories there, and you could be in with a chance to win Capture One Pro, Peak Design bags, Flickr Pro accounts. It's a really great prize fund this year. So David, thank you for your support in that competition. Appreciate it. It's been a long year. I know you live stream, as you say, as much as I have, but it's nice to get to the end of the year. Thank you to all the viewers who have supported me throughout 2021 here on the show. Hopefully you have learned a lot about SmugMug, about the industry, about our ambassadors, about our partners like Dave and Capture One. It has been a real thrill. I'm going to say cheers to you all. Cheers, Dave. Cheers to everybody watching. Chink, chink. Here's to a much more open and fruitful and joyous 2022 when it comes along. And I hope everybody stays safe over the holidays. I believe it's due to snow anytime now, Dave.
Apparently,
so we may have to duck for cover. Oh, there you go. It started snowing.
As if by magic.
Yeah, as geeky live streamers always like to add a little geeky live stream thing. So the fact that it's snowing, I'm going to wrap things up. Everybody have a wonderful holiday. Have a fantastic new year when it comes. Stay safe as always. Be kind. Look after each other. We'll see you back here in 2022 on SmugMug Live. Thank you so much. Cheers, everybody. Take care. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.